In this video, I want to introduce you to assignment 2. This is a video for week 3, and in doing so, I want to let you know about basically what the design brief is, what are the different things that you need to do to submit for assignment 2, what is it individual and teamwork, and also some of the things that you need to start thinking about as you proceed with assignment 2. I would suggest that you start thinking about assignment 2 as soon as you have actually watched this video. So if you look at the Canvas, look at the modules and then assessment information assignment 2, you find that I would continually update the resources in that page. Basically, the learning outcome for this assignment is we want to teach you how to use a human-centered design methodology to produce a solution that supports positive and desirable user experience. So in terms of the human-centered part of it, we want to make sure that you think about things like people's privacy, people's freedom, people's ability to act, and stuff about human-centered design that I talked about in week 2. In doing this assignment also, we want to make sure that you can create useful and effective design artifacts. So we're talking about things like personas, user journeys, basically storyboards, prototypes, all sorts of design artifacts. Okay, you need to learn how to make them. You need how to know how to make useful artifacts in order to support the user experience design process. Because when you go and work in an interaction design practice, when you're working in user design, user experience design, you will not be doing the same project, but you'll certainly be asked to do a lot of user journeys and making personas and stuff like that. So knowing what the artifacts are and how to make effective artifacts to support your design process is very, very important. It's a skill that you need to have. We want you to know how to conduct usability evaluation and how to conduct user experience evaluation properly, be able to interpret the results of your evaluation, and then use the results to implement refinements of the prototype you're developing. Finally, I want you to understand how to realize the solution. So come up with a solution that can support better and desirable user experiences with digital technology. And the topic I want you to focus on in this semester for this user experience design project is to design digital technology, so a digital technology that can support better experiences of commuting. Okay, so to start with, you need to think about a demographic who commutes regularly. You also need to consider the different types of people in that demographic. For example, you might want to consider university students who have to commute. Okay, maybe within that you might want to look at a segment of that university students, maybe university students who are working full-time as well as commuting, maybe university students who have who are single parent, or maybe university students living in a shared household, maybe university students who have very limited budget. So you don't have to go down to that sub-demographic, but at least start with a demographic like university students. That would be a good place to start. Okay, but in terms of whether you need to go down to a sub-demographic, it really depends on what that sub-demographic is and whether it is relevant for this design brief. I would suggest that you talk to your tutor to make sure that you are aiming at the right level. I will talk about what commuting experiences is later on, but first, the yellow box is so important, and I don't want to repeat this many times, so I just want to say this once and for all. Expect to do a lot of things in this subject that do not seem to contribute directly to assessment. And it's particularly in this design assignment, you'll be asked to do a lot of things that doesn't count towards an assessment. Of course, you don't have to do them, but if you don't do them, then you'll not be able to practice creating those artifacts to support your design process. And if you don't create them and do them, even though they're not assessed, then you're not able to support your design process. So interaction designers constantly produce versions of personas, ideation, stories, and artifacts as a way to think, to refine, to get inspiration, to solve problems. So we want you to get into that mode of doing things not because, oh, I'm doing it because it's going to give me a mark, but I'm doing this because I'm going to learn, I'm just going to help me think about my idea, it's going to help me grow as an interaction designer. So as you move into advanced level of interaction design, this is the kind of attitude that we want you to have, no longer in that kind of, first year university student. So, well, if I'm not going to get any mark for it, then I won't do anything for it. Sure, you can choose, but you're probably not going to do very well at the end, and you're the only one who's going to suffer. So you'll be working in a teams of 4 to 5 students, and you'll be assessed individually and in a team, meaning that in this whole design assignment of 50%, only 40% of that will be in a team, 10% will be yourself. And even when you are in a team and you get 40%, you may not get the same mark as your team members, because we're going to insist that you do a peer assessment to evaluate how each other are doing, and we might have to differentiate the marks. If you don't put in the work, if your work is just not of quality and not of what the team has agreed upon, you might not get the same mark. Okay, so be aware, and there are really no arguments at the end of it. We will just make the differentiation in the marks when we total up the final mark itself. So as I said before, you should be producing as many versions of the design artifacts as possible throughout the subject. And by the way, if you create a lot of personas, if you create different versions of the storyboards, you can use them in your portfolio, which is an accessible assignment. So once this team start working together from week 7 onwards, most of your tutorial times will then consist of team meetings with your tutor. So we no longer have the tutorial where we come together as a whole class and talk about stuff that the whole class will do, but rather we'll try slotting in 15-minute meetings with each team as a tutor, rather than having that whole tutorial. But we'll talk about that closer to the time. So which means that between now and week 7, you'll be working on your own first. Let me explain. So, as you can see in this main table here, the main deliverables are persona and UX stories. You get the journey map, and you get the prototype evaluation report, and you get your design in action video. And of course, in between all that, you'll have storyboarding. You have different kind of prototype fidelities and stuff like that you need to produce. That's not going to be marked. Okay. Now, in week 3, which is this week that you're watching this video in, you should start as an individual. Note that your individual deliverable are persona and UX stories and user journey map. Okay, they are due in weeks 5 and week 7. We will form teams at week 6. So from now onwards, what you need to do is work on your own. You need to conduct desk research. So what's desk research? Desk research, for those people who have done experience center design, is basically looking at the internet, looking at different products, looking at some of the research articles and also articles online to see whether anyone has tried to develop solutions for this particular design brief. Okay, you also in this time need to start doing user research on your own. Okay, and then you need to analyze that user research. You need to do the user research and analyze the data regarding people's activity of commuting, who the users are, who are they, understanding who they are, and also understanding the experiences for the community. Okay, I'm going to talk more about that in the next slide. What you need to do is also then use that information to create your persona and to create your user experience stories, and to submit it by week 5, okay, on your own. Okay, so you got to do all this on your own now. And don't worry about personas and UX stories. I'm going to revise that next week in week 4 in my video lectures. We're also going to be teaching you in week 5 how to do user journey maps. So you do that based on your idea of your solution. So basically what you have to do first on your own. So as an individual, what we require you to do is actually to do the research, to analyze the data, to understand what commuting experiences is for the demographic that you're trying to support. Okay. And then I want you to, based on the data that you've collected, based on your understanding of your demographics experiences, highlight some of the areas in which you could possibly support in terms of an interesting user experience, okay, and come up with an idea about what that user experience could be and how the idea could be put into a solution, how that solution might look like. And all this is done by week 7. And then you write that idea out in your user journey map. Okay, your user journey map would outline your proposed idea. And meanwhile, around week 6, you would start a group, start a team formation, and you individually bring all your ideas and have a conversation together and discuss your different ideas about commuting. Some of you might be dealing with different demographics, some of you might be looking at different user experiences. That's quite normal. But through that listening to each other, I like the team to then think about, well, yeah, we really like Tom's idea. Let's go with that idea. Or we like Tom's and Mary's idea. Let's kind of merge that idea together, okay, to come up with the one team idea that you'll pursue for the rest of the semester. And this negotiation needs to be done with your tutor to make sure that the tutor agrees, and the tutor would help you to refine that one final idea that you'll continue on with for the rest of the semester. So as a team, you'll need to, by week 10, produce a prototype evaluation report. It means that you will really need to have a prototype that you've developed from about week 7, week 8, week 9, and then around week 9 you start evaluating the prototype and writing down the report and handing up the report by week 10. And by week 12, you'll need to be able to use a reasonably high fidelity prototype that you've refined through your evaluation and create a video of your demographic using that prototype in action, doing a commute, and trying to show us how it supports not just the usable and user friendliness of it and intuitive to use, but also the user experience that you say that you're going to try and support. Okay? So I'm going to skip this and go here first, and then I'm going to go back. So what is commuting? You need to know what commuting is. Basically traveling from your home to either a workplace or to a university, and commuting usually denotes kind of a regular activity, something that you have to do and repeat doing regularly. Okay, so let's say you've decided to go to Blue Mountains just for an excursion or to have a picnic there, and you don't do that every day. That's not commuting. Okay, that's just going on an adventure. Okay, so commuting usually denotes something that happens, a travel that happens kind of on a regular basis to a same destination. So for university students coming to university to campus, let's say if you live in Fairfield and you take a train and then a bus, that would be a really interesting commuting experience. But of course, commuting can then take many different forms. Commuting can take multiple transport. Commuting can take public transports. Commuting can also include personal transport, like I drive a car and that's my commute, and then I park at the university car park. Okay, or I drive a car, but I drive a car and share my driving with another classmate whom I pick up along the way, and we do that regularly. Okay, that's also another commute. Commuting can also involve taking a bicycle. You can also talk about commuting taking, let's say, Uber. So if this is what you do 4 times a week or 3 times a week to come to university, and you take an Uber, and then that you can count that as a commuting experience as well. Okay, or riding a bicycle, as I said before, or a motorbike, or some people say, oh, what about when I ride my motor scooter, or a skateboard? And if you do that regularly, you could count that as the commuting as well. So commuting experience is actually, what is the experience like when you commute? Because a lot of times people also use technology to support the commute. Okay. For example, on long commutes, people have been known to put their headphones on to listen to music to make it less boring. Okay, but also people have been reading, people trying and entertain themselves. But some people maybe use the technology to block off the noise of the commute. Or maybe sometimes people feel that they might feel some worry in terms of security and safety. And particularly now when we're commuting in a time of COVID, there are other different concerns, concerns about physical distancing, concerns about catching COVID, concerns about other people being close to you. And so what ways in which technology can be designed to support a different kind of user experience that's more desirable are all there for you to think about. So let's go back. So your user research, your desk research, It's very important that we start now. And I'm going to get your tutors to talk to you about in the tutorial next week about this user research component. So most of your tutorial will be involved in doing that. Okay, so I've actually started to help you by providing you with some questions to think about. When we're trying to learn about your demographics experience of commuting, so it's basically what you want to do is understand your participants' experiences of commuting. The main thing to do is actually to study the participants' activities of commuting. So the act of commuting, the activity of doing the commuting itself, and what happens during the commute, and what do people think, feel, and do during the commute. Remember that. So you need to form questions based on these big questions that I produced here in this slide. So number one, you need to find out how do people do commuting. Okay, which means that how is the activity conducted? Do they need to do different public transport types, or is it just one? Does it involve walking first to the station and then waiting for a train and then walking from the train station to university, or does it involve picking up someone along the way? So how is the activity conducted? What's involved? Right? Does it involve like tapping, and what sort of technologies involved, like tapping the card or carrying the phone, packing different things, eating in the commute? When and how often is the activity conducted? Okay, is it every day? Is it at a certain time of the day as well? Okay, and how long is the commute? I think it's very important. And also, why is the activity conducted? Why is the commute? Why is there a need to commute? What do people think about the commuting? So you need to collect information about, what do they think when they're commuting? What do they feel about the commuting as well? And what factors affect their thoughts about commuting? Okay, is it because, I really don't like to commute because, I really don't have a lot of money and I don't get concession when I'm commuting? Or I really like commuting because it lets me get to university, but using public transport because it saves the environment. I don't want to contribute more to the carbon level of the environment. Okay, so what are people thinking about it? And so does it mean that they feel better about the commute? Is it a better experience because they get to do public transport? What about their thinking about safety and security, and also about COVID? How do people feel? This is the easier one, okay? What do you feel about it? Do you feel like really, really bored about your commute? Do you really feel like it's very uncomfortable? Do you feel icky because there are a lot of people that's smelly in your commute? Whatever it is. And what factors are affecting their feelings, okay? Why do you feel that way? Make sure you ask about that. Why do you feel that way in a different situation? Okay. What technologies do you use to support or to improve your commute? Okay. Why are these technologies used and how are they used? Are they used during the commute itself or before as a planning device? And you need to know already what the technologies are at play so that you can then design something in addition to what they're doing or to change what they're doing with their technology. What do people wish for? So this is an opportunity that you're trying to find out about the commuting, particularly with technology, right? So start with about what do they wish for. I wish that the commute is actually not so boring. I wish that the commute is not so full of people. I wish I knew how many whether I will be safe in this commute, whatever it is. Or I wish that the commute will be on time. Okay, and that I can make it in time to go to work or make it to university. Okay, what are your hopes of commuting? And then think about what opportunities and technology can be in terms of a solution to support this hope. Of course, another one to think about is actually what are some of the pain points related to commuting. So ask people what are some of the horrible things, what are the things that they don't like about commuting and stuff. And that's where you perhaps can think about solution for technology that has not already been used. Okay, so it's important that we design something that is on top of what they have, okay, or to replace what they have. Okay. So if you're designing something to do with music itself, but what people are already doing, there's no point in reinventing a music player. Okay, it has to be something different in addition to. So if it's about maybe designing people to discover other people's music in the same commute for a long commute, rather than just listening to their own music. So. And then I would suggest asking questions that relate to the various factors that can affect your experience of people, your participants' experience of commute. So think about the social, think about the physical environment of the commute, think about the environmental aspects of the commute. Okay, how about the way that they see themselves? Okay, do they feel also worried when they're traveling with a very empty commute with strangers around? So you need to start exploring your demographics experiences of commuting, the good, the desirable, their feelings, their thoughts, their needs, and all that sort of stuff, and the technology, and how does technology play a role. And you have to do that on your own, individually, from now onwards, for at least for the first next week, week 3. Okay? If not, you might need to also continue doing it to week 4. Now, if you don't do enough of it, as in if you don't do a good job of it, then your persona and your user experience stories and your user journey will not be very good. And also by the time you talk to your group, you won't have much to bring. And this is your time to really learn how to do this on your own. So an overview of the design activities and deliverables. I want to remind you that you see those hexagonal boxes there, week 5, week 7, week 10, week 12. These are when the deliverables are due. But these are also the different things that you need to do. So you need to start with user research, analysis, findings, insights for UX. From there, you create a persona from the data. So you also need to understand your demographics. Okay? And you also need to then use the data to write 2 to 3 user experience stories, which we will teach you next week, as in week 4. Okay. From there, personally, individually, you need to come up with an idea, more than one idea, an ideation. Okay, and then you take this stronger idea that you think that you have and create a journey map, and that will be due on week 7. So the journey map will outline the person's journey using your idea, using your design solution, stepping through from maybe leaving home until arriving at the place that they want to commute to. Then you bring that journey map and your idea to pitch to your team members, okay, when you start forming your team. And with the team members, after consulting with the tutor, will then decide on the one idea. Okay, then you'll start creating the prototype. Okay? You start then evaluating the prototype with usability evaluations, experience evaluation, which goes back up to refining the prototype. Okay, all this, the data you collect from your usability evaluation and your experience evaluation will go towards writing your evaluation report, which needs to be completed and submitted by week 10. Okay. In the meantime, you probably need to do, storyboarding, different types of prototypes, okay, from paper to digital, and you need to refine your prototype through this evaluation process. And by about week 11 or early week 12, you should really need the latest have a solution ready and be able to shoot a video, okay, showing how your demographic can use the solution, not just to satisfy the goals of commuting, okay, in an easy, usable, intuitive to use ways, as I said before in the revision lecture, but also to achieve a certain type of user experience that you've determined earlier on to pursue. Okay, so that's really the assignment itself and all the deliverables. Okay, there will be video lectures, as I said, throughout this video that we will cover to teach you how to do journey map. We'll teach you how to do the usability evaluation, remind you how to do that, and actually talk about how to do experience evaluation. Okay, it's important though that you are familiar with the assessment criteria for each of the deliverable. To do that, you need to read the assessment, the assignment description document found in that page on Canvas. Okay, you also need to be very, very, very clear and careful to understand how you need to submit each deliverable. What's the file name, where to submit, what's the time to submit, and the deadline of submission. Okay, so all the best, and you will hear more about the details of to do this assignment in your tutorial in week 3.